It's being described as the first case of its kind. A teacher who happens to hold strong religious beliefs, banned from the profession for, the headlines say, misgendering a trans pupil. This is Joshua Sutcliffe, a teacher at schools in both London and Oxford, who's been found guilty of unacceptable professional conduct after the Teaching Regulation Agency said that he had deliberately and repeatedly misgendered a trans pupil at school and shown material to children that was inappropriate, including comments like, "When men deny their masculinity, they run away from responsibilities, leaving destruction and devastation in their wake," and "Women want real men. I don't know any woman of any age who is attracted to a passive man who looks to her to be his provider, protector and leader." He was also found by this panel to have told a pupil that he didn't believe in gay marriage. The panel found it was more likely than not that he did breach professional standards, and so he's been barred from teaching. He says he's devastated. He'll say he will seek to challenge the ruling. Schools across the country are waiting for government guidance on how to respond to transgender pupils. It's expected to say, according to reports, that teachers can refuse to use alternative pronouns demanded by students. Joshua Sutcliffe joins me live. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. The report says that the school that you taught at in Oxfordshire, Charwell School, had internal guidance to refer to pupils by their chosen pronouns. Why did you choose to ignore that?
Well, that guidance was actually given after the incident, and it was the gender-bred person, which I don't know if your listeners are aware of, but that's a Stonewall training, which is contested. So I felt, even having seen the training, that it wasn't something I would want to go along with, as it conflicts with my Christian views.
Which is, of course, completely reasonable if you take an opposition to something that the school is telling you to do it. But it obviously makes your employment at the school rather tricky if you decide to be more responsible to your beliefs than perhaps to the school's policy.
Well, I think you're maybe suggesting that the school has authority to coerce my speech, my views, and so on. And for me, the line was drawn in the sand on that issue. I couldn't be coerced into doing that. I did try and make provisions for the student by calling the student by her name, and I thought that was an appropriate compromise. But sadly, very sadly, the TRA didn't feel that those provisions were good enough, and that, among other things, as you've mentioned in your intro, has meant this ruling in recent days. Yeah,
you made a decision, an active decision, not to follow the guidance from the school or the respect to the pupil that might be conferred on them by choosing those pronouns. And again, I come back to the question of why. And you say this is your strongly held religious beliefs that prevent you from doing that.
Yeah, I think on reflection, I think the safeguarding of the student is paramount, and actually, I don't think affirming the student's pronouns going against biological reality was the best thing to do. At the time, I was very naive to the issue, and I didn't. I just sort of thought, I made a decision, that I've mentioned to you today. But on reflection, I think that schools and teachers shouldn't be affirming these things. It's a very serious path to go down, and we should really approach it with much caution.
Well, I tend to agree, but I think there is a difference between. Do you think that there is a difference between affirming a child's sex based on what they want to, i.e., you're a girl, you're a boy, versus calling them by the pronouns that they wish to? That there's a distinction between saying that, yes, you have changed from a girl to a boy, versus calling someone he, him, or they, them, or ze.
Well, that's the beginning of these. It's the beginning of it, and as responsible adults and health professionals and teachers and other people with these sorts of responsibilities, I think right at the very first point where this question, these questions come into the student's mind, there should be a real degree of caution. And I did try and make a sensible compromise at the time, as I've mentioned, by calling the student by their name. But as is in the press, my conviction is to not use the pronouns. And I think that is a position probably held not just by Christians, but by other teachers. And so I'm looking forward to the guidance.
Sure.
Yeah.
You were invited on this morning, and that's the TV programme, by the way. It's not a reference to you being on the radio this morning, and referred to the incident in a way in which the report says would have identified the pupil as trans when it actually might not have been clear to other pupils at the school that they were. I mean, that's very serious. Do you regret that?
I don't regret going on this morning. I do think that it was brought light to the issue at large. Obviously, myself and the school and other parties, were involved in a periphery manner, but it was never my intention to cause anyone distress.
Oh, I'm sure, but you did. You basically outed a pupil in your care as being trans.
There wasn't much outing, to do.
Who says?
It's men and women are different. The bone structure, facial structures, and it's quite difficult to hide those things.
So you can test the idea from the report that actually this wasn't well understood at the school.
I would, yes.
Why did you tell a pupil in a maths lesson that another pupil had stopped being gay, quotes, because being gay was wrong?
That was actually in a Bible club, which was a forum I held within the school. And
well, again, not according to the report, Mr. Sutcliffe. There are parts of the report that say this was done in a maths lesson.
The report that they did make that finding, but I didn't accept that point.
I understand.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the finding is that you, in a maths lesson, told another pupil had stopped being gay because being gay was wrong. Why did you do that?
I did have a friend that left the gay lifestyle and I decided to live a Christian lifestyle. And the students found out about that. And I don't regret sharing that information. I think, some people make those choices and that's up to them. And, I don't think students should be shielded from these sorts of ideas.
But you told them in such a way as to say that being gay was wrong. You didn't say in a sort of passive sense that this person decided not to do this or that and do this or that. You said being gay was wrong. Why? Why did you say that?
I would contest that I'd said that. I would have said, in a age appropriate way, I would have said something to the line of, I have a friend who has left that lifestyle. Although you might have seen my YouTube videos of the street preaching and things, obviously that's very much in the public domain. But in the classroom, I do know where the line is, and I'm very, I'm sort of very top level.
Well, according to the TRA, you don't, because. Well, not least because you've been struck off from teaching. In what context did you show a video that said when men deny their masculinity, they run away from responsibilities, leaving destruction and devastation in their wake, that women want real men? I don't know any woman of any age who is attracted to a passive man who looks to her to be his provider, protector and leader. Why did you show that video during a form period?
I didn't show it during a form period. I did have discussions with tutees about issues wider than the Christian faith. The school was a Christian school, but we actually heard at the hearing that the video in question, those teachings were in line with the Christian faith and in line with the
teaching that I don't know any woman of any age
Catholicism.
The teaching that I don't know any woman of any age who is attracted to a passive man.
That men and women have roles within society to bring up children in the Catholic faith, and that was we heard that at the hearing, that it was in keeping with the Catholic faith.
Well, the hearing said that part of the reason why you were struck off was because the context in which you did this was the wrong one from their point of view, and the panel says that no other views to counter the views you were offering to those pupils was offered to them. So you were preaching there, not teaching, weren't you?
No, obviously, again, it might be difficult for you and your listeners and people in the public to, see that, but I am actually very much capable of drawing the line in the sand and,
But I just bring you back to what you said at the start of this interview, which was you felt your Christian faith prevented you from going along with what you saw as particularly unchristian policy regarding pronouns. So you absolutely let your faith, or felt compelled to let your faith guide you about what to say, what to do, and when.
We're kind of covering several issues, Tom. I'm getting a bit lost here. I think what I would say about the Prager University video is that it has 10 million views, and it's not an out some sort of obscure
No one's
view
saying.
or
Listen,
some.
I'm not here to say whether your view is right or wrong. That's not what I'm contesting. It's not what I don't think the job of the TRA was to contest whether you're right or wrong. The issue is the context in which you did it, and what other opinions did you provide those people to help their learning about this stuff, rather than just telling them how you felt and that was the end of it.
Well, Tom, I'm very open to discussion. When we had these 40-minute tutorials and it mostly just discussing Bible passages, you know, pupils would share their thoughts. And I encouraged my pupils to take responsibility for their actions and to behave well in school, and they were actually the best form group in the year. They responded well to my guidance, and
Your
whenever.
guidance.
Well, my I'm trying to just sorry, I don't always use the best words. I'm just a mere maths teacher, but my supervision as a form tutor, uh, they did very well, and no doubt when hopefully we win the appeal case, and hopefully I go back into teaching and maybe take on responsibility in that field again. Hopefully students will appreciate my service.
So, do you
as a
feel
teacher.
then, as you mount this challenge, that the main challenge you want to bring is about limiting your freedom of speech, freedom of thought within your profession?
Well, yes, I think the scrutiny I've faced has been, I mean, quite something more than most.
Sure, I understand.
Obviously there's a range of views in society, and that would be a main point that we bring to the High Court, will be that the Christian characteristic is protected just like everyone else. And
Absolutely. But referring to one of the paragraphs in the report, in the final summation of all the evidence that was heard, the panel, it says, was mindful of Mr. Sutcliffe's strong and sincere religious beliefs rooted in his deep faith, which led him to have a personal conviction against using preferred pronouns. Mr. Sutcliffe has a right to hold this belief. It is the manner in which Mr. Sutcliffe chose to manifest this belief to which objection could justifiably be taken if he failed to have regard to pupil A's dignity, to treat them with respect, or to safeguard pupil A's well-being.
That could be used for any teacher anywhere.
But that's the job, sir. The job is to lay down your sincerely held beliefs at the door and go in and teach pupils.
And which I'm very good at doing. But you need to say that to every teacher in this country who attends humanist conferences and shares views on evolution in the classroom. And there's a whole range of views that are shared in the classroom every single day. And
they might be shared, but the counter is offered too,
less than most that on the sharing them in the classroom. I'm quite good at keeping on topic with the maths, and I enjoy teaching the maths. And
so, why do you think you've been singled out here?
I think that the student who made the complaint had a real distaste for my views. Her and her friend saw me handing out leaflets at the Pride March, and realized that I was a Christian, and the school really didn't know how to handle it. That instead of just calling a meeting and saying, let's all proceed in this manner, they kind of, they didn't know how to handle it. And so, and the TRA, just the same, they didn't know how to say,
Do you think you could have handled it better?
I think so. I mean, we just have to call a meeting, get the parties involved, and, suggest an appropriate way to proceed, as a community together. It's quite easy for people with different views to live together. We see it every day in the UK.
But
it's very much possible.
It is, of course. But just finally, there is a special, unique responsibility placed on teachers, of course, to look after the dignity and well-being of their pupils.
I agree, Tom, and I think obviously my view of as to how one would do that would differ from someone else's, which is why I'd be happy to discuss an appropriate compromise from the parties, and that's why I suggested the meeting. But like I say, my Christian views have come under real scrutiny, and I'm hoping that the High Court upholds my freedoms as a UK citizen. And I hope people see that I do really try my best to fulfill my duties as a teacher, and I do it vocationally. I enjoy the role, and hopefully the government and the TRA see that
Okay.
in the end.
Good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Joshua Sutcliffe, teacher, banned from teaching for, amongst other things, refusing to call a student by their preferred pronouns.